That's what we always say here. Just to be sure, give a microphone to Inácio. Let him speak as much as he wants. Expand the possibilities so he can really express everything he's feeling. Guys, if I tell you that over in Indonesia, where he thinks he's going to meet Trump, he might actually meet him. But the spokesperson for the President of the United States gave him a harsh response, as did other United States officials. The guy doesn't even show up. And he says, look at the level of absurdity, that a drug dealer is a victim. Can you believe something like that? That those guys like Andre Durap, these guys are victims of the users. Then that guy over there goes, Ricardo Lewandowski. No. Look, you don't need to label our guys here as extremists, not like Al-Qaeda. You don't need to, no. And Trump, keeping an eye on everything, he's hanging by a thread. There are even some people say the Venezuela issue will be resolved by year end. But then those real big shots from the American army got involved. We'll show everything here. The video is amazing. Like, subscribe, and join our family for more news and info. Look at Lula's dream, right? The White House released the schedule of the President of the United States. And it doesn't include the Union Stooge. It doesn't include him. As you can see here, let's take a look here.
Tomorrow at 11 p.m., the president will leave the White House for Malaysia, arriving Sunday morning local time.
Trump will arrive in Malaysia Sunday morning.
It's a long flight. President Trump will attend a bilateral meeting with the Prime Minister of Malaysia in the afternoon. He will attend a meeting with the Prime Minister of Malaysia. He will then attend the Association of Southeast Asian Nations Leaders working dinner.
After a working dinner with Association of Southeast Asian Nations Leaders, Lula wasn't invited. Monday morning, local time, he flies to Tokyo. Then, just forget it. It's possible that he won't even receive Lula, okay? Won't even receive him, especially after the outrageous things Lula said. Lula, once again, provoked. He doesn't want to solve anything. He doesn't want to solve the Italy issue, which is easy. He doesn't want to solve any of that. He wants more clashes. For him to be able to turn our country into a dictatorship, he needs a provocation against the President of the United States. That's obvious. He has no intention of stepping in or solving the situation. He wants things to fall apart. So, in other words, President Trump doesn't have anything scheduled to meet with him. Unless, of course, they run into each other again, like what happened at the United Nations. After President Trump, he will travel to Tokyo. He'll meet and congratulate the Prime Minister. Guys, what a Prime Minister. The Margaret Thatcher of Japanese lands. Man, it's the most beautiful thing when Japan does these ceremonies and all. The Prime Minister was with the Emperor. These are wonderful images. I'll still bring a video here, but let's get to what actually happened. And that's why, guys, when you imagine, no. Lula has crossed all the limits. Does the hole have an end? No. There's never an end to a hole where this guy isn't even in. Look here.
The users are responsible for the dealers who are also victims of the users.
He's saying here that the dealers are victims. This statement, of course, has already reached President Trump's ears.
Responsible for the dealers who are, victims, for the dealers who are, victims, for the dealers who are, victims of the users too.
Let him speak as much as he wants.
Victims of the users as well.
Of the dumbass who shows up in front of me. Damn it.
Professor Olavo de Carvalho, correct? In fact, he's still one of our family's followers here, right? Of our work. It's surreal. How can there still be people who manage to defend it? That's what I'm saying. You must be very dishonest. Because Globo started a campaign saying that Trump is the biggest villain on earth because he's solving the problem in Venezuela. He's getting rid of those boats that are used, like that one, right? Look, to take that crap over to the United States, right? But here it shows very clearly. Look, the boats are boats. They're boats with 3 engines so they can travel fast, right? Look at the blue barrels there. Each of these little boats can carry a ton of that junk. They flood the United States with this. Thousands of boats like it. Before the United States took action, there were thousands of boats like this. And they're going to get here sooner or later. That's clear and obvious. I'll show it here in the video. We're noticing that not even the press. It's every time, right? In all these press conferences, they're making it easy for Lula. Well said here by Clark. Look, in this third part of the press conference, Painho is already quite annoyed with the consortium, which is putting him on the spot. So he starts speaking from the heart, says whatever comes to mind, and claims that there was no violation of human rights. That's why there's no reason for sanctions against ministers or political figures in Brazil. Because all the ministers were following the country's constitution and there was no mistake. Next, he already comments on the taxation policy and the National Congress, visibly unbalanced. Lula is like this. The first few minutes, he still even follows the script there, everything that's nicely prepared for him to say. After that, he starts to lose track. He gets lost. For example, if you're reading a text, he loses his place and so on. And then comes the improvisation. Look, when you let this guy talk, that's when he exposes his rotten side. Let's see.
Waiting for a release of Brazilian coffee from taxes. What other products or sectors this harms?
Is an agreement possible? I wouldn't hold a meeting. I never.
What I would do? He doesn't even know if he'll be able to meet with Trump. He wants to present himself as if he were an authority figure. But nobody respects this sellout here anymore. Coming from abroad, nobody does. Let's take him out of here. This guy is too disgusting for us to talk about, okay? I'll show the consequences here. That's what matters. Colombian justice prevailed with the acquittal of former President Uribe after years of political witch hunt against him and his family. The same thing that was happening with President Bolsonaro was also happening there, with Uribe in Colombia. But what's funny about this news here is that it's posted by the United States Department of State on the Portuguese page. Look, USA in Portuguese. In other words, it's their social network in Brazil that's truly interesting. In other words, it was a message addressed to those personalities there. Over there in Venezuela, they solved the problem. The judiciary there acquitted Uribe. They also tried to disqualify candidate Uribe there. The persecution of his family was the same. But it's much worse here, right? Against President Bolsonaro. And they back down. Here, you can already see Trump. Look, Trump suggests ground attacks in Venezuela. Something serious is coming. The Profile Area Militar, which is one of the best here, right? When it comes to this topic, drugs by sea are almost reduced to nothing. They still come by land, but less. Because they see that something is going to happen, and they're right. Something very serious is going to happen, equivalent to what's happening at sea. We are informing Congress, but we have to do this for national security. We have to do this to save lives, said the President of the United States.
Drugs by sea, as they also call it, that's almost nothing, as you can imagine. So they keep coming in by land a little less because they see that something is going to happen. They don't like it. And they're right. Something very serious is going to happen, the equivalent of what's happening by sea. And we're going to Congress just to tell them what we're doing, just to keep them informed. We have to do this for national security. We have to do this to save lives.
Donald Trump is not messing around. Here's where I come in. Look. Let's take a look here. What about Marshall Billingsley, right? He just said in the Senate, dirty money financed Brazil. Dirty money. The former Assistant Secretary for Terrorist Financing at the United States Department of the Treasury says that the Venezuelan regime used illicit resources to finance left-wing political campaigns in Latin America, including Brazil. The statement was made during a hearing of the Senate Committee on International Narcotics Control. He also reveals here that he held positions in the area of security and international finance during the Trump administration. He said Nicolas Maduro's government made Venezuela a hub for South American political coordination. The regime that spread socialism in Latin America is the Venezuelan one. It is the dirty and corrupt money from Venezuela that financed Gustavo Petro's campaign in Colombia. They funneled money to Mexico and Brazil. With democracy in Venezuela, the money for socialist campaigns in the region, oil revenues for Cuba, and support for Nicaragua will end, he told United States senators. During the hearing, he accused the Venezuelan regime of turning the country into a willing haven for Hezbollah, offering access to forged documents, drug trafficking routes, and routes to the Western Hemisphere. With its Lebanese infrastructure in ruins, Iranian funding for Hezbollah will take a decisive turn in Latin America, especially for drug trafficking. And his speech, it came during fresh claims about transfers and Venezuelan resources. These guys mean business. And then this guy comes up to me, man. Look, it limits me to say what I think. Lewandowski explains his opposition to labeling the PCC as terrorists, hinting they understand the reasons. That Trump is going to deal with this issue. But he will. He's taking it step by step. There's no use. He can't handle everything at once. Can he handle it? Yes, he can. That's obvious. But the problem is public opinion, right? Suddenly he acts in Venezuela, Colombia, Nicaragua. Well, not so much in Nicaragua because there's not so much information about that crap going there yet. But here, especially, public opinion starts to get really tough. Not that Trump cares much about that. But he handles it there. Which already puts a lot of pressure, right? A lot of pressure here. And automatically it's already happening in Colombia. So he's handling it wonderfully well, step by step. Here, look, as we can see, right? He has already fired against Colombia. Colombia is already a country, right? Under the command of Gustavo Petro, who, sooner or later, will get a visit from Santa Claus Trump. Trump doesn't beat around the bush. Gustavo Petro is a criminal and is making cocaine. If he doesn't stop, we'll take serious action against him in Colombia.
He said what?
He said if you don't change, you might be eliminated. Do you see this as a threat?
Well, he's a thug and a bad guy. He's a guy who's doing a lot of drugs. As of today, we've just suspended all payments to Colombia, the country Colombia, and also to Columbia University. We made a deal. We made a deal with him. But no, he's a thug, he's a bad guy, and he really hurt his country. They're doing a very bad job. Colombia, they produce cocaine, they have cocaine factories, they grow all kinds of crap, drugs, bad drugs. Entry into the United States usually happens through Mexico. And he better be careful, or we will take very serious measures against him and his country. He's a thug.
To wrap up, do you know why Trump hasn't lost his temper yet? With this stooge claiming to be Brazil's temporary representative. Because of President Bolsonaro. And the system knows. The system knows that President Bolsonaro, as a hostage, is still the one preventing Trump from reacting. Because the President of the United States himself also knows that they are capable of doing anything against President Bolsonaro. At this moment, when they're doing all these outrageous things, because everything ends up on Trump's desk, you can be sure of that. Everything gets there. So that's the situation. He's walking on eggshells, so that these people don't commit the worst atrocities against President Bolsonaro, who is already an elderly person. Trump knows that. There are the after effects, the terrible after effects of that incident with that guy from Socialism and Liberty Party. And he also knows that they are capable of absolutely anything. But don't worry, everything will be resolved just as he has been doing, solving the situation here in the region in South America. Share this video on WhatsApp, Telegram, and Facebook. Like and subscribe to join our family. I'll return soon with more news and updates on the Pies of Finos channel.